Have you ever felt judged by someone? And it's always someone who didn't themselves experience childhood trauma. And it feels like they're judging you because they state their observation. They say out loud that it seems like you keep making the same mistake over and over again. It's like you know that you're doing that on some level, but you can't see it coming, and it hurts when people judge you. And if you're like me and so many other people with CPTSD, you've probably been very hard on yourself. You've probably felt shame about what seems to other people like, why can't I learn? Why am I such an idiot? And I know for sure people with CPTSD, we're not trying to hurt ourselves. Little do other people know that for people who grew up with abuse and neglect, that kind of blind spot behavior where there's a big red flag, not just like waving in the distance, but it's like poking you in the forehead and you can't see it and you walk right into trouble. That's not you being bad, that's you showing common, normal adult signs of early trauma. It just does that to you. And it's not just you, you're normal. This is a normal symptom experienced by people who grew up in abnormal circumstances. And one of the best things about when people send me letters here is that when the rest of us hear what it's like for someone else who has what we have, we find out that some of the behaviors of our own that we've felt ashamed about, it's actually a thing. It's a thing. We're not bad. We have a known symptom of complex PTSD. And that's why it's so wonderful that people here are so supportive of the letter writers. Sometimes seeing how they are struggling with a mistake helps us see what a mistake looks like. And it's really helping everyone. And I thank all of you who are kind and supportive and not critical of letter writers. So I have a letter writer today. I love this letter. It's from someone I'll call Patty, and I'll share it with you here. Hi, Anna. I've been watching your channel for almost a year now, and I take your free course online, and I've been engaging in the daily practice every day. I know I have CPTSD from my parents who are in an ongoing abusive relationship where my mother, who was physically and emotionally abusive, has been chasing after my father for the past 30 years. And my father was also emotionally abusive. And it might be worth mentioning that my father had a secret family, us, entirely while he was married to someone else and had kids with them. He put us up in a trailer park in some podunk town so that we'd never run into his real family and treated us like we were something to be deeply ashamed about. I haven't spoken to either of my parents in years. All right, I'm going to get out my fairy pencil. I wanted to show this. It's my new, very fancy enameled pencil. It's pink. My husband gave it to me as a gift the other day, and I thought it was really lovely. Because I use my fairy pencil. When I read letters, I circle things that I want to come back to in a second reading. So I'm going to read Patty's letter. Then I'm going to go through it a second time, and I'm going to see if I can help you, Patty. Here we go. All right. So Patty says, last week I met up with an ex, I'll call Albert, who I was in a relationship with 11 years ago when I was a freshman in college. Albert and I grew up in the same podunk town together, except I was trailer trash. Ouch. And his family was distinguished and successful. I also went to school with his sister, and she knew of my reputation for being a delinquent and told him as much. But we met for the first time in college, and he pursued me right off the bat. I have to admit, I was not physically attracted to him at all, but he pursued me very enthusiastically, and for weeks we played a game of cat and mouse, where he begged me to be his girlfriend, and I would repeatedly refuse, saying I wasn't interested, until finally I realized what I was doing was wrong, that I had a nice guy asking me out, and I should give him a chance. So I finally said yes, and within a few weeks of dating, he quickly began to lose interest and saying mean and hurtful things about my appearance and my intelligence, and I was so hurt and confused as to why, given how much affection he had shown me before. I'll never forget the day we broke up. I asked him, "Do you even like me?" To which he replied, "It's different when you're chasing someone." It wasn't just him, though. I'll be transparent here and say that when he asked me out again, I said no very rudely. In fact, I left his message unread for days because I knew that he was only in it for the chase, and part of me wanted to get back at him. And yet when I found out he was in a relationship and no longer available or interested, I sent him a very risky message telling him I still had feelings for him and that I felt very certain we would be in the right place at the right time and everything would be just right at some point in the future. He never responded. Okay. The last message was sent 3 years ago. A lot has changed since then. I moved to a different city 2 hours away, have a nice, comfortable job, and have been in therapy in addition to watching your videos. I haven't dated in 3 years, and my therapist finally gave the okay to start dating again. I got into a dating app, and lo and behold, Albert was on the app, and we matched instantly. Since it was Bumble, I had to be the one to message first and just said, "Hey, how are you?" He responded immediately and very enthusiastically, telling me he was in town for a festival with a friend and asked if I would like to go. I refused because my instincts were telling me no, but he kept pushing and offered to pay for everything. He told me he was at a cafe and asked if I could at least come and say hi, and I tentatively agreed. His Bumble profile said he was looking for a relationship, and his bio said, "Kinda don't want to die alone." I took this to be very endearing and vulnerable. When he saw me, he immediately got a nosebleed and said he was self-conscious. He told me he had baby fever and asked me if I wanted children. But again, I took it to mean that perhaps he was ready to stop playing games and settle down. So I let my guard down and finally let him convince me to go to the festival. We had a wonderful time, or so it seemed. He paid for absolutely everything, including my ticket, which was wildly expensive. And even though he offered to pay, I felt bad and said I would pay for his drinks. His friends seemed to be playing the wingman by saying things like, "Now you have to get down on one knee and propose," and remarked on the coincidences of us meeting up that day. I know it was his friend saying it, but he blushed hard. I guess Albert blushed hard and just laughed nervously. I let my guard down. We danced and laughed the entire night, and he let himself be very physically comfortable with hugging me, holding my hands, rubbing his hands along my waist, resting his head on my shoulder, and holding me. So I let myself be comfortable with him and had my hand on his lap for most of the night. We talked about shows and movies, and I felt comfortable in saying, maybe we could watch this or that show together. Every time I even remotely mentioned potential plans, he would just do his nervous laugh. At the end of the evening, I asked him and his friend if they'd like to spend the night, since he had a long drive back to our hometown. And he said my offer was tempting, but he was on call. He kissed me on the cheek and said goodnight and glad I could convince you to come out. I asked him to please let me know when he got home, since it was a long drive, and he never texted back. Then 24 hours later, he finally responded saying, "Sorry, I'm a bad person. I obviously got home okay. I'm just emotional right now because I just broke up with an ex. I'm all effed up. It was definitely good seeing you. I was definitely fixated on having you come out, which was awesome, but I just don't think I can do anything else." My heart was absolutely shattered, says Patty. It absolutely devastated me that there I was letting my guard down yet again with a guy who had done the same thing to me before. I suspect it had nothing to do with the ex, but instead on the fact that I didn't make enough of a chase for him. I cried so hard for a week, and now I feel like I'm right back at square one. All the hard work my therapist and I did was almost destroyed. All my insecurities from when I was a child came flooding back, telling me I'm no good, I'm not interesting enough, pretty enough, or smart enough, and I'll always be just the trailer trash as before, and he'll always be on the right side of the tracks. However, this time I didn't just take it, and I had to get some of my dignity back. I sent him a message saying, "My instincts told me not to go out with you that day, and I should have listened. Frankly, you shouldn't be on a dating app if you're still not over your ex. This really shows a complete lack of empathy on your part. I hope someone comes into your life who will get your hopes up and break your heart just like you did with me. Don't try to contact me ever again." I immediately blocked, unfollowed, and unmatched him. I admit I feel like it was a bit dramatic considering he barely seemed to remember any of our time together, and we hadn't seen each other or spoken in years. But it isn't the first time he's done this, and I just couldn't understand why he would show so much interest, only to just pull back and drop interest when I reciprocated. Again, I'll never know if he responded or read it, and I don't know what his possible reaction could have been. I have plans on moving back home next year, and given our propensity for running into each other, I have no doubt I'll have to see Albert again. My question is this, Anna. Why would someone do this? At what point is it safe to show interest in a man or woman who is pursuing you? Why do people play this game of cat and mouse? And do they even realize how badly it hurts someone when they see you close up and say, meh, I changed my mind? For those of us with CPTSD, it can really set us back. People tell us to work on our trust issues and look for actual proof they're interested first before falling into limerence. Please give me that tough love. I also need advice on how to behave myself when I see him, because I'll probably want to throw my drink on his face. Sincerely, Patty. All right, Patty, you came to the right place. Let's go through your letter and see if I can give you some guidance here on how to look at this, what happened, and what to do. All right. So your background here, the little that you told us, it was just nice and concise, but it told me so much. Your parents are in an ongoing abusive relationship. Your mother was physically and emotionally abusive and has been chasing after your father for 30 years. He was abusive, and it might be worth mentioning, you say, it's definitely worth mentioning, that your father had a secret family, and it was you. You were a secret family. Your mom was his side chick. That's a rough word, but I've been making videos lately about the curse of the side chick and how it happens to traumatized people. Women, there's a male version as well, the nice guy, right? And it says, so he had a wife and kids and this secret family, which was your mom and your family. And it says he put us up in a trailer park at some podunk town so that his real family would never know about you, and treated you like you were something to be really ashamed about. And you haven't spoken to your parents in years. So I'm just saying, okay, that's an extreme situation. And one thing I just want to address about it is that when a man has abandoned the mother of his children, a number of things could happen. I'm just zeroing in. It's terrible. The whole situation sounds horrible and so psychologically harsh. This thing where you keep mentioning that you're trailer trash. It just I cringe every time you say that. But I guess that's the word you mean if you actually grew up in a trailer park and you feel less than because of it. But the reason you live there is because you were poor, and evidently your mom, it was like he put you up. And so I was a single mom, divorced, and nobody put me up. I worked and created a home for my kids, and it wasn't easy, but I'm just going to start out by sort of looking at the way you perceived your mom as having no power and your dad as doing that, as putting her up in this place that was bad. So I don't know if he was financially supporting and that's all they had, but your mom's not the victim of where he paid for her to live, all right? So I don't know what, but if he was married and the whole time, she had some conscious knowledge, I presume, that she was having an affair and having children with a guy who wasn't available. So it's all screwed up, but I just want to help you take back the power for your mom, that she was doing whatever she did, okay? And I'm bringing that up because I see so many parallels in how you were raised and how you're treating yourself right now, that I just want you to see that nobody can do this to you. They can treat you that way, but it doesn't become your fate. It doesn't become where you are trapped in your life. You have total choices, Patty. All right, so you say, this guy Albert, so last week you met up with him, and you guys had a brief relationship 11 years ago when you were a freshman in college, and you grew up in the same town, but you had this huge socioeconomic difference. You were poor, and his family was distinguished and had a lot of money. And I'm changing your language from trash and successful, because I think those adjectives you're using are horrible. They're horrible. You're talking about a financial difference, perhaps the adequacy of the amount of parenting you each got, but that does not make you garbage. All right, I just want to get through to you, Patty. I also grew up poor. My mom had episodes where she told me she wished I was never born. Do you look at me and think to yourself that my family's poverty or my mother's indifference toward me affects my value in any way or makes me trash? I've had that exact same fear. It used to haunt me, but I don't have it anymore, and that's the daily practice. I don't have it anymore. Of course I'm not trash. I'm a whole, beautiful human being just like you are, just like everyone watching this video. All right, so let's not call people trash just because they were abused or just because they're poor or because they live somewhere, that's poor. They are not garbage, all right? You are not garbage. Okay, but you perceive that he was like way above you, and I get it. Like the kids with money sometimes had advantages that made them popular, but I got to say, in my school, it wasn't the only thing that made people popular. I also went to school with his sister, and she knew your reputation for being a delinquent. And you didn't elaborate on that. I don't know what that means, if you committed crimes or if you were just poor. I suspect you're being overly harsh on yourself, because that's the pattern I'm seeing here. All right, so she told him. So it sounds like a little bit like, you feel like she tainted his perception of you. But you met in college, you had a relationship, and you were not attracted to him, but he pursued you very enthusiastically. And here's where I'm seeing the pattern, where while you perceive that he's driving this whole relationship, I'm going to point out to you as we go through this letter all the points where you actually co-drove this relationship. This is a 2 steering wheel relationship or non-relationship, and because you want the tough love, and I want to help you see that you have agency. You made choices that got you into this relationship and that caused you to get hurt. Now, I don't like this guy. I don't like how he treated you at all, but I know that such people are out there, and I'm here. I've got your back because I want to help you become somebody who just doesn't even give people like him the time of day. There are great men and women all over your life who deserve your time and attention. Let's look at the difference here and look at where you do have agency. So you said, I would repeatedly refuse his advances saying I wasn't interested, or his expression of interest. It doesn't sound like he was, molesting you or anything. He just kept being into you. You said it was a game of cat and mouse. So a game of cat and mouse is a game of 2 creatures. Are you playing the mouse yet? I don't know. Maybe you were just like, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. That's not the mouse. That's just the person who doesn't care. He begged you, and then finally you say, I realized what I was doing was wrong, that a nice guy was asking me out and I should give him a chance. Okay, so just hold on. Actually, what you were doing was right, because he's not a nice guy. He wasn't a nice guy then, but you psyched yourself out and overrode your gut instincts, because that's what we do. You were probably trained to do that as a kid, but back then when this happened and you were a freshman in college, your instincts were good. You were not attracted, all right? You were not into it, and then you convinced yourself that you should go ahead and date him, basically because he wanted to and because he was a, quote, nice guy. And you may have been fooled by his family's economic situation into thinking that equals nice. But in this case, it doesn't, and we all know that. Money does not cause people to be nice or not nice. It's, we all have souls we've got to cultivate. We've got to cultivate our goodness, and we can be bad in any circumstances, and we can be good in any circumstances. So you finally said yes, and within a few weeks of dating, he quickly began to lose interest, saying mean and hurtful things. He didn't just lose interest, he was crappy to you about your appearance and your intelligence. Like, who does that? That is not a nice person. That's very antisocial, very uncool. Everybody knows that you should be kind, right? He knows that. And you were so hurt and confused as to why, given how much affection he had shown you before. And I'll never forget the day we broke up. And I asked him, do you even like me? To which he replied, it's different when you're chasing someone. And that is when he gave you the key to who he is. He is someone who has something that you could kind of call a fetish or a kink, right? Where he gets very interested when he's chasing somebody who's not interested. And when they are interested, he loses interest. So guess what? He's still single, right? So far that hasn't worked. That's a very difficult sort of kind of weird sexual preference to have, that you never actually are with somebody. That's a very lonely sort of situation, but that's what's driving him. It's different when you're chasing somebody. And I'm just going to tell you something, that there's a version of that. You can see that would sometimes happen in a traumatized person, but more often what we see is people who eroticize abandonment. So that's what I'm going to suggest sort of happened to you. That when somebody treats you badly and leaves you, there's this charge to it. And even though you later in your life tried to set boundaries with him, you fell for him. Like, your feelings of affection and love for him grew over the years after he treated you that way. And I'm not saying this to criticize you at all. I'm saying this to tell you, I totally know what that's like. That is something that I had to heal in myself, because it's a horrible, destructive facet of complex PTSD. It comes from, let's just look at what your dad did, all right? He side-chicked the whole family. He made you second rate. He hid you. And so, of course, you have a vulnerability to people who are going to do that to you now. That's what we do. We become vulnerable. We get a blind spot. We definitely don't choose it consciously. So what's cool about when, now you're in your 30s and you've had some more experience and you've started to see the natural consequences of when this CPTSD symptom comes in and messes up your life, then you kind of know, okay, I've done that. I have a pattern of doing that. I never want to do that again. And as a woman grown up, you now have the power to design guardrails around your dating life so that you don't do that again, even if your mind is not processing information as quickly as you need it to be able to handle yourself safely in those situations. Because that's what happens. PTSD, it'll start to, interrupt your ability to reason and look logically at situations. So we have guardrails. We write them down in advance. That's what my dating course is. You write down in advance, like, where is this likely to happen? Where do I get triggered and where do I sort of like switch off and not kind of see the red flag in front of me? So you're just like all of us. This is yours, and you can start to set guardrails. When he eventually asked you out again, you said no very rudely, and you left a message unread for days. Okay, so you knew he was only in it for the chase, and I can see how earlier on in this story and this relationship over the years that you thought, maybe it was just something deficient back then, and maybe things have changed. Maybe he's showing interest because he's seen the light that you're really cool, because you are. Just saying, this is not about you, his behavior. So when he asked you out again, he was only in it for the chase, and part of you wanted to get back at him. And yet, when you found out that he was in a relationship and no longer available or interested, that's when you sent him a risky message. Okay, so here's where your trauma-driven thinking kicked in. And first it's like, I'm so mad at him, I want to get back at him, I want to tell him a rude no, I want to make him feel the pain he made me feel. And then, he's in a relationship, then you write him and say, I still have feelings for you. And that, I feel very certain we would be in the right place at the right time and everything will be just right at some point in the future. Woo! Very risky thing to say, but there it is. I told you, Patty, I just want to show you points where you drove this relationship. So once you told him that, what happened is your CPTSD, you remember that enough to tell me, but at the end when you're like, why does somebody do what he did? It's because you told him. You told him you were receptive. You just said, I'm still here for you to do your trip, your romantic kind of BS with me here. I know you weren't asking for BS, but in your mind you were thinking, I think there's really something there. I think that's what this is really about. Only a little girl whose dad is too ashamed to live with her or talk to her and must hide her in another town, only a girl who lived through that would think that a guy who treated her like he did in college was really the right guy and it was going to come around one day. Because just rationally from the outside, it's like, oh yeah, this guy really has problems. No-go zone with that guy. He's no fun. So then a lot changed and your life came together. You moved somewhere else. You have a nice, comfortable job. You've been in therapy. Like, good for you, Patty. Good. All right, you're doing it. And by the way, later when you say it's ruined, it's not ruined. You're getting your experience that will help you be clearer about where your vulnerabilities really are. So you are not set back. You're just experiencing what it's like to be you and the part that's not healed yet. Okay? So just embrace that. Just love that part of you. Okay. So you got the okay to start dating again, and you got onto a dating app, and lo and behold, he was there, and that you matched instantly. And since it was Bumble, you said, I had to be the one to message first. Okay, so just, again, I want to show you the pattern. You didn't have to do anything. In fact, if you wanted to, you could block him. You could block him. But I understand. You probably saw him. There was that charge because, none of us chooses who we fall in love with. It happens. So you were like, you maybe would have wanted to sit back and see if he took some initiative, but you can't because of the nature of the app. It has to be you. It has to be the woman. And then, so you said, hey, how are you? All right, so you opened the door. You were like, I see you. I'm opening the door. And the last time he had heard from you, you said you were hoping that you would be together for real, that you were kind of made for each other, and he didn't get back to you. So now you've done a second communication, and this, hey, how are you, is, okay, I'm just saying, he's not a good guy. And yes, some people will say he's taking advantage of a vulnerable person, but it's not actually his job to figure out what your boundaries ought to be and respect what you have not set as a boundary. Other people's job, at best, is to respect what we say the boundary is. But when you're saying, come into my life, then, okay, so I'm just saying, all right. So right away he asked if you wanted to hang out at this festival, and first you said no because your instincts were telling you no. Okay, one more vote. Patty's instincts, they know, you know. But he kept pushing and offered to pay for everything. So that's interesting. So what? He offered to pay for everything. Well, actually, no, not so what. I get it. Like when it's a date, a man pays for everything. But somehow I feel like there's a charge there from this wreckage you have about he had money, your family was poor, and he offered to pay for everything. And this creates a power imbalance for you. Like I think inherently, I think it's really good to, if a man asks you out, to let him pay for everything. And so what's interesting is that when you got in there, you felt bad when he paid for your ticket, and you said, oh, I'll buy drinks for you inside, but he ended up paying for everything. But also, I think if a guy asks you out and you think it's a date, one way you signal that you think it's a date is that you don't jump in and try to convince him that you should pay for half of it. I would say when a guy asks you out and offers to pay for everything, then let him pay for everything if you consent to this being a date. And if you don't want it to be a date, one way you can signal that gently is to go, no, I'll pay my own way. So you were getting into some complicated dynamics about who pays and money. Then he said he had baby fever and asked if you wanted children. That's when I think, what a manipulative jerk. And he says on the dating app that he's looking for a relationship. Oh, but here, I circled this and I wanted to say, this is where I start to have really bad thoughts about this guy, is that he had said on his dating profile that he was looking for a relationship, and his bio said, kinda don't want to die alone. And I just want to say, if I were to do like a poster of a guy you should not date, it's a guy who says he wants a relationship, and his reason is he kinda doesn't want to die alone. That's not a good reason to have a relationship. And something I just want to drop a seed in your mind is when you consider who would be a good person to marry and to be with, look for a guy who's able to say, I'm looking to get married and settle down. I want to find somebody who I have a really great life with, and we have these values in common. And, if he wants children, who also wants children. I want to raise a family, who can describe themselves as having this as a value and something joyful, and who has some indication that they recognize that both marriage and parenting are service positions and not this sort of gig where you kind of don't have to die alone. I feel like he was telegraphing right there that he has profound selfishness. And that's what's propelling him to have a relationship and not a cat and mouse thing. It's just this fear he's got, I could die alone. That might be okay, but I kind of don't want to. Oh. So there was a big clue. Okay, so this thing about babies, to say in a woman in her 30s who happens to want that is super manipulative. So okay, because that's not where he was coming from at all with you. It's just not where he was coming from at all. And he didn't make that clear, and it was confusing for you. So I can't say enough about how much I disapprove of his behavior. So everybody who's going to get mad and think that I'm just I think that he's not responsible, I do. But the thing is, I'm here with Patty. I'm helping Patty not have this problem anymore. And I'm helping Patty make some changes. So just saying, everybody. All right. Had a great time, it seemed like, the paying. And then his friend was saying all these things like, now you should get down on your knee and propose. I have no idea why his friend said that. I can see how it got you kind of going a little bit. But even so, even if he turned out to be a guy who really saw the light and realized you were great and wanted to marry you, I would say you gotta really put some distance between getting together with this person and what they are saying they're coming from because of the way he's treated you in the past. And it would be very rare that somebody who treated you in the past would belong back in your life or bring anything good into your life. And the only exception I could say is if somebody had a huge change of heart in themselves, in which case they would come and tell you. They would come to you and say, listen, I want to talk to you. Sometimes people who get sober do this and say, I need to make some amends, and I realize I treated you very badly. And they might make amends to you even though they're not trying to get back together with you, but they would acknowledge what they did and give you some kind of explanation of what happened there, and they would apologize, right? So he never did that. So Patty, I'm just saying, like, you got together with somebody who treated you in a terrible way, and it would be strange if he didn't do it again. It would be very unexpected if he didn't again. He never owned it, right? And then you notice that every time you talked about the future, he would laugh nervously. So that's interesting. I think that's a big sign, the nervous laughter. And I guess at best, with somebody who's really cool, you could give them the benefit of the doubt if all they have for you is nervous laughter instead of a genuine response about the future. Like, yeah, that would be fun. I'd like to do that. How is Tuesday, right? Well, here, okay, so then he's being physical. The hugging and holding hands and the waist and the head on shoulder stuff. This is like classic emotional vampire stuff. If he were serious about dating you, that would be like going way too far when you've just been reunited after a set of disasters and then no contact for several years, right? So that's just really, it's just pushy, it's manipulative. Your instincts are good, Patty. You were right. So this is not how it goes. And I'm just, you're poor thing. Your parents didn't model anything for you. They continue to be abusive with each other. So then you say you let yourself be comfortable with him and had his hand on his lap most of the night. Okay, so what you're doing right there is saying, yes, I'm sexually interested in you. I'm open for the next thing that's going to happen here. All right, that's what you were doing. I'm just going to keep referencing these things because you just seemed baffled at the end, like, how could he do this? But basically, he treated you like a jerk. He promised you nothing except to buy a ticket for you. He did the cat and mouse thing again. And your life just opened up like a red carpet to him. And you said, maybe we could watch this or that show together. So you were basically asking him out. Okay. At the end of the evening, you asked him and his friend if they'd like to spend the night. You asked him out again. You're pushing. You're trying to like bring him into your life. And he's still somebody who's never acknowledged what he did or apologized. He's just doing all this weird sexual behavior. And when you get together with a really cool guy, I'm just going to say, don't get it tangled up when you're all there with his friend and it's an early thing. I would say, do not get physical. Do let him indicate whether he's interested in asking you out. Just kind of hang out. Use dating. This is even a date, but use dating as a way to let information come to you. Don't put out probes for information and be like, hey, can we hang out in the future? Hey, can you spend the night? That's putting out probes into the future. Just hang out, let information come to you, and let him show you who he is and what he intends for this relationship for the future. He doesn't have to dictate what it is. I would especially encourage you to have that more like wait and see approach if things have been awkward in the past, if it's a first date, okay? So this is just like you need information at the beginning. So then they didn't want to spend the night at your house. Then you did it again and you said, please let me know when you got home, since it was a long drive. Okay, I just want to say to everybody, it is not necessary to tell people when you got home. That is a disguised attempt to maintain contact. So the energy is very palpable right here that you were clinging. You were trying to cling and make sure there was future connection, and he wasn't giving it to you. So you tried 3 times. Can we do something in the future? Will you spend the night? Will you text me when you get home? That's what happened. You were chasing him. And yes, he led you on, but you were chasing him and you chased him really hard and he didn't text you back. So right then you had another opportunity to kind of go, oh, wow, this is terrible. This is no good. So he texted you the next day and said he's sorry that he blew you off. I think he realized sort of that he did something. You didn't describe a proper apology there, but it was something like that. He just said, I really wanted you to come out and it was awesome, but I just don't think I can do anything else. And as much as that was hurtful to you because of the expectations that have built up in your mind, it is so straightforward. I don't think I can do anything else. He can chase you for an evening, but he can't do anything else. So, he's kind of messed up. He's kind of damaged. And he said he was damaged about an ex. I don't know. Who knows? He said he was ready for a relationship. People have a right to date. People do not have an obligation to be totally interested in us after, in the middle of a date or after a date. A date is an opportunity to kind of see how things feel. So again, I don't condone how he did this. He definitely led you on, but He keeps telling you who he really is. He keeps telling you, and you keep overriding your instincts and trying to grab onto him and pull him back into your life. So you cried hard for a week. And that part I approve of. Like, that crying and grief about how this doesn't work out is appropriate and real, and I'm glad you're letting it out of your heart. And now you feel like you're right back at square one. You're not, Patty. You're not. You're making progress. Sometimes what we still have unhealed comes up and presents itself to us. And you're doing the daily practice now. This goes into the daily practice and becomes transmuted into freedom from these old ties and beliefs and low opinions of yourself that make you think that when a man treats you badly, you should run after him and try to hold on to him. That's what's hurting you. So you wanted to get your dignity back, and you never lost your dignity, honey. You never lost it. You don't have to get it back. You have your dignity. And in fact, the way that you can sit in your dignity is just like, let him go. Just let him go. Don't even try with him anymore. There's no point. There, that hope springs eternal. If I could just say the right words, he'd realize how he hurt me. He'd apologize. Maybe he'd come back. But this is a guy, I would say, just don't contact him. And you blocked him, and that's good. And you're going to be moving back in town where, as luck, it's a small town, you may very well run into him. So you said, why would someone do this? And they do this because they can, because that's what turns them on, and you give your consent to it and let them into your life time and again. So hopefully you won't anymore. At what point is it safe to show interest in a man or woman who's pursuing you? It's safe. It's really safe at any time, but it feels like it's not safe when you're with somebody who can't bear to have actual reciprocation because something's wrong with them, okay? And there's a slight chance there's nothing wrong with them. He only does this to you, but if he only does it to you, all it is it's like most people in the world. Most people in the world are not interested in me or you, Most people are not. And every once in a while, lightning strikes and two people will really be into each other and they give it a go. And whatever trauma they have complicates it, right? But it can work out. It can work out. You're a perfectly whole and good woman, and you are interested in finding your man. You want to find your man. And you know what? That's a good and worthy thing to desire in your heart. And you get to work on that. You might want to take my dating course, I'm just saying, or do my dating coaching to help you get clearer and stand within what you really want and be clear about your intuition and get support from a group so that when your intuition is confused, you can, get your friends who understand this mission of trying to date in an emotionally sober way, that they can help you. They can help you kind of figure that out and help you spot the red flag even when your blind spot is kind of making it hard to see. So that's what you can do. Why do people play a game of cat and mouse? Because at a small level, that's just kind of sexy, right? But for him, it's kind of gone off into a whole different level. It's what you'd call disordered, I think. And the way he treated you, I can't diagnose him. I don't know him. I don't know what the full picture is, but he didn't treat you well. And I don't think he cares how much it hurts you all that much, not enough to quit doing it. And so people tell us to work on our trust issues and look for actual proof they're interested first before falling into limerence. Yes. So I'm just going to tell you that if a guy does that for one night, that's not enough time. When we say, work on your trust issues by looking for actual proof they're interested first. If you didn't have CPTSD, I'd say, well, go on maybe 12 dates before you determine whether try to get some information like what are they really like? What are they like when they're stressed? What are they like when they're angry? What are they like when they're scared? And start to get to know somebody before you invest them in any trust. If you have CPTSD, I'm just going to say, oh my gosh, at least 3 months. I think the difficulty is that like the common culture is that people can just meet and they just like maybe have sex right away, or there's this idea like 3 dates. If you wait 3 dates, you were very sensible. But not with CPTSD, 3 dates is just ain't doodly. It's just nothing. It takes a long time, especially when you have blind spots and you have attachment wounds. It takes a long time to get to know somebody. So the longer you can make that time between meeting somebody and spending some time together in some context where you get to know them, and then actually sleeping with them, which is when your bonding attachment is going to really like kick into high gear. And even if they're no good, your attachment is still going to like need to hang on. That's the sad thing about CPTSD. It imprisons us in bad relationships once sex has occurred. And not 100% of the time, but a lot of the time enough that the people out there, you will know what I'm talking about. And as much as it's hard to be culturally different and to be very slow about becoming intimate with somebody, it's a very powerful tool for people who have attachment wounds and who were treated badly by their parents to change their pattern. Oh, and by the way, Patty, just don't talk to him anymore. If you see him, just nod and walk away. Don't have contact with him anymore. Don't have conversations. There's no need to get even. There's no need to tell him how you feel. You told us how you feel. You have now like thousands of people who care how you feel, and we heard you, Patty. You have been heard. You have expressed yourself and been heard, and we're with you, and we want better for you. So for those of you who relate to this, who want to talk more about setting boundaries and limerence and having trouble seeing the red flags, I've got a video lined up for you right here, and I will see you very soon.